Hi, everybody. Hi. I'm Katie Cassetta, Associate Director here on the Aspen Ideas Festival team. It's an absolute delight to introduce you to two very special people. We might be in the mountains, but tonight we're talking about our ocean. Paul Nicklen and Cristina Mittermeier are renowned photographers, marine biologists, and co-founders of Sea Legacy, an organization that fiercely advocates for our ocean, our planet's most abundant provider, but one that we are pushing toward a brink. They're here from Vancouver, near where they live on Vancouver Island. Any Canadians in the audience? Okay, a few. You'll understand soon that they are powerful visual storytellers who are proving that sometimes you can defend an ocean with just a camera lens. The two of them will speak first, and then sit down with an important friend of theirs and an important friend of the festival's, the one and only Katie Couric. So please join me in welcoming to the Aspen Ideas stage for the first time, Cristina and Paul.
Well, thank you, everyone, for having us. And in case it needs to be clarified, I'm Cristina Mittermeier.
I'm Paul Nicklen.
And we flew in from Canada yesterday. It's a long, long flight, and we were very excited.
We're a little flat and a little blue tonight. For the Canadians who understand that Edmonton Oilers lost the Stanley Cup last night to Florida, so it hit us hard. But we're going to push through. Go Panthers.
Yes,
All
go
right.
Panthers. They earned it.
Congratulations.
Yes. Anyway, we're here with you for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, tell you a few stories, show you a few pictures. And before we tell you what we do and why we do it, we're going to show you how we do it.
Thank you. All right, everybody's relaxed and in the mood. Before we start our 25-minute presentation, we have to have a quick disclaimer, and that is that we know Katie Couric is one of the great unbiased journalists of this century, but we know her well, and we know John extremely well. I sort of said for a joke one day, hey, do you guys ever want to come on our boat? And they said, we'd love to. So when they agreed to come into little airport of Loreto, Mexico, we sent a van. We thought we were going to be bringing in their entourage and their security detail, and we brought another bus for all their luggage. We quietly parked all those vehicles, and Katie and John got off with one little rollerboard, and it was just the two of them. And they got on board our boat and turned out to be the coolest guests we've ever had. Where was that?
The best.
The best. And John did most of the driving of the boat, some of the drone flying, and Katie made most of the meals, and we laughed and we talked about conservation. So it's going to be a real privilege tonight to share the stage.
Come back anytime.
You guys are the only guests that we're welcoming back anytime. So just to get us a bit of history and a bit of context, my story began when I was my journey really as a photographer, as a journalist who specializes in the most inhospitable and coldest parts of the planet, began when I was 4 years old, when my family moved from southern Saskatchewan all the way up to Baffin Island, where we lived in an Inuit community of 190 Inuit people. We never had a radio, we never had television, we never even had a telephone. You would phone out once a year. Our groceries got delivered to the shores of this community once a year. But what it really taught me was two things: how to be tough, how to freeze, how to survive in such a cold environment, and also develop the right creative part of my brain by learning from the Inuit with their visual storytelling through the soapstone carving and lithograph paintings. And I don't know what your family camping trips look like, but this is us camping on a beautiful spring day. It's minus 30. We're out on the sea ice. Those huskies at the bottom of the frame are the early warning system for polar bears when they come into camp. But I knew I was going to do something someday that had to do with protecting the Arctic, and the obvious job seemed to go off and become a scientist, to work as a biologist working on species like polar bears. Here my friend Mitch is trying to dart it. I've been assigned to the bitey end of the bear to distract it while he tried to give it a hand injection. And I learned very quickly that we were failing with science. Science was important, but it was often overridden by politics. And so I just thought, if I could just get a job with a little-known magazine like National Geographic, then I could spend the rest of my life translating what the scientists are telling us. And I knew that I would spend the rest of my life giving a face and a voice to the species that are being most threatened by a changing polar regions, both the Arctic and Antarctica. But it was an amazing adventure to spend 3 years, for example, living on the sea ice every summer for 3 months at a time, just to have one good day of photographing narwhals. I crashed 2 airplanes in this journey. I dislocated my shoulder on this day and had to be sent out of the project. But as they were trying to reset my shoulder and I was wincing in pain, all I could do was remember all of the tusks and the ivory and the narwhals that we were able to photograph that ended up making it into National Geographic magazine. And we actually changed the laws on the export of ivory from the Canadian North with that story. And thank you very much. So this is me in my office. This is where I get to go to work. And the only skill that I have that really separates me from all my peers, that makes me better than most of my friends, is that I'm really good at being frozen and miserable. It's really the only skill that I have. Over to you.
Well, meanwhile, I grew up in Mexico City, and I come from a middle-class family. My parents were professionals. My dad was an accountant. My mom was a psychologist. And we didn't have camping trips at all. So I had these dreams of seeing animals. You would read these books, and my imagination would run wild. So I would beg my mom, please take me out to see animals. So here I am with all my siblings in Lake Xochimilco, which is the most polluted lake probably in the world. But in my wild childhood imagination, there were manatees and dolphins in this lake. And so I went on to get a career in science as well. I became a biochemical engineer in northern Mexico, and I spent 4 years looking at the ocean through a microscope and starting to understand just the incredible power that the ocean has to keep us alive. But I had hope that in this university I was going to see whales or dolphins, and we never saw any. I really, for very selfish reasons, became a photographer just for the opportunity to spend time in nature with animals like this. This is a rain wolf. It only lives in the coast of British Columbia, just north of where we live. It's a distinct species from the timber wolf, and as special as it is, it's not protected. I love spending time with animals because they don't have an agenda. And when you grow up with the mean girls in high school, you just want to be with beautiful things that do not judge you back. But as I was learning to make pictures of animals, I was also learning that taking pictures of wildlife can be really hard. Because even though animals don't always want to have the picture taken, it's our job to photograph them in ways that make even the smallest of animals look majestic and important, because they are. All the species on planet Earth are the foundation that allows life to exist here. But what I really wanted to do was to be an underwater photographer. I wanted to take my passion back into the ocean. And this is dangerous, and it's expensive, and it takes a lot of equipment. So how do you do it? Don't worry, the cameras were fine. Of course not. But just to have an opportunity to take a photograph like this. This is a leatherback sea turtle. And we photographed it off the coast of Portugal in the Azores. The water was freezing. And I thought surely she was going to swim away when we got in the water. But she didn't. She just stayed there. As I swam around, I could see that she had a little tag on her fin that told me that she was born in West Palm Beach, Florida. And where we had found her 4,000 miles from where she was born. And when I'm thinking about these animals, I'm wondering, how does she know one day to make a U-turn and following a map that only she can see in her head, head back to the same beach where she was born, and for a few hours go on land and lay her eggs? We know nothing about the planet we live on. And if we just recognize that animals are other nations, we might stand a better chance of saving this planet.
Nice.
Thank you.
All of the work we do, and we're going to talk more about the conservation work we do with Katie, but we want to just give you an introduction. But all of the work that we do is at the intersection of art, science, and conservation. It needs to be a beautiful, powerful, evocative image that you can hang on your wall that can live there forever. It needs to be able to talk about the conservation issues, but it needs to be based on science, in fact, if you are going to have that honest conservation. So I was sitting in Svalbard. It was a very bad ice year. I'd been there for 25 days. There was a blizzard going on outside, just a big whiteout, and I'm just waiting for the weather to get better. And I looked up in this window, and we're in this cabin that's half the size of the stage. It's 6 feet by 8 feet. And I look up in the window, and just a few inches from my face is this polar bear's face. So I did what you would do. I opened up the window, and I greeted her. And then I realized very quickly that she could fit through this window, and she kind of wanted to come into this little cabin, which there was no space for her. And so I had to entertain her. And then I realized that this was a very important storytelling moment. Because of the whiteout, her face was fully in shadow, so I thought, how do I get some light on her? So I lit that lamp, which I don't think had been lit since Amundsen had come through there. I just kept her busy. I kept talking to her, kept sort of not letting her in the cabin. Went to go out the back door to get my flashes on the sled, and she met me at the door. I couldn't get those. So the only thing I had was on my sleeping bag on the floor was my laptop. And I opened it quickly to a blank white page, and I held it up about a foot from her face, and I was just able to fill in the shadows on her face and make that image, which is a really important image, because anytime bears come into conflict with humans, they're called problem bears, and you're allowed to kill them, and they don't even come off the hunting quota in Canada. So it's a big issue, and it's a really important image. I ended up making it into National Geographic. This image is called Ice Waterfall, and we have Erica here tonight who with Hilton Contemporary Gallery, and she has some of her art collectors here tonight. It was great to see you all again, and this is one of my most popular...
She represents us.
Yeah, she represents us. So this is one of my most popular fine art images, but it's also a hard storytelling moment, which really makes me happy that this lives on so many walls. It was the opening double-page struck to the National Geographic climate change issue, and in fact, it's pretty cool when a band like Pearl Jam calls me and says, hey, we're doing an album called Gigaton, which is the measurement used for the amount of sea ice and glacier ice and ice shelf ice disappearing from the polar regions, because the number is so big, but we want to put that image on the cover of our album. So it's great that that starts to get us out of our echo chamber and speak to a different audience.
And I just want to quickly acknowledge that Paul grew up with the Inuit people in northern Canada. I grew up very close to indigenous communities in Mexico. And a long time in my career, I spent photographing indigenous people all over the world. I'm not going to talk a lot about it tonight, but just to say that they are the stewards of most of the biodiversity that's left on planet Earth. And they are the last people on this planet that still are connected to the operating system on planet Earth. And if we want to heal our planet and regain balance, we better start listening to what they're saying.
Yes. So, although we're scientists, both of us, we're not going to get into science and data here with pictures because they often don't create that emotional connection. But this is the most important data slide that I can show you. This is 800,000 years of data collected. I was in Antarctica photographing them, pulling out all the ice cores. So they're looking at carbon over 800,000 years. And you look at the natural cycle. Every 300,000 years there's a rise in the temperature, there's a decline in the temperature. And then you get into the last 300 years of time here, and that line goes off the chart like a hockey stick. And that's not going to change until we change our ways. So this is an incredibly important slide to remember. For me, somebody as a biologist, I saw 3,000 polar bears in my lifetime, and I had never seen a dead polar bear until recently, and now we're starting to find dead polar bears. And when you talk to scientists and they say that polar bears are going to be extinct in the next 100 years, I want people to know that it's not just data points falling off a sheet of paper. These are charismatic, beautiful animals that are out there that need sea ice in order to survive. I'm not gonna show you this whole video because it's too depressing, but this is a starving polar bear video that we released several years ago, and it shocked the world. It's very, very hard to watch. But we did not want that bear to die in vain. He probably only lasted a couple more days. We told its story, released it to the world. That video got over 2 billion impressions, so a quarter of the planet apparently saw it. It's the most viral video in the history of National Geographic. It was Christina's photo of this situation was Time Magazine's top 10 images of the year, and over 300 major news networks put that out there. But we do this type of storytelling because we want to have a microphone. We want to talk about the issues. It's fine to take a good photograph. Nothing tastes better than a conservation win. And we just had our most recent win. Why don't you just mention it?
Yes, we just came back from the Dominican Republic, where we were working with the government, creating a local campaign to expand the protections on the silverbanks, which has been a sanctuary for humpbacks for a long time, but which was not protected against fishermen. And it's a brand new expansion to protected areas.
And our nonprofit, Sea Legacy, was asked to come up to Norway. In fact, we did a big feature story for National Geographic magazine about orca behavior, but then we were called back a couple of years later to actually help create an MPA to help keep oil drilling and seismic exploration out of this key little area in the Lofoten region to protect the orcas in this time of year when they need to feed. And we use spirit bears. We often use really beautiful, charismatic megafauna to drag people into the conversation. So, of course, we all love Star Wars and Ewoks. This just happens to be a black bear that carries a rare recessive gene that makes it pure white. Made it onto the cover of National Geographic magazine. Cristina flew in with ABC News, NBC News, a team of photographers between that and National Geographic, and mostly working with our partners, led by the First Nations, we were able to protect this entire area from ship traffic. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Majesty surfacing, a large grizzly bear that was when the Supreme Court judge in the Yukon talked about how we need to protect the Peel watershed from gold mining. He held up our article in National Geographic. Cristina talked about the sea wolves. Well, in fact, we were able to get some donors to help us buy, for $1 million, we bought working with a bunch of organizations, we bought a whole hunting tenure. So now if a sport hunter wants to come and kill a wolf,
they have to call us.
They have to phone us for their license. And of course, you know what the answer is. We just helped protect 160,000 square kilometers in between South Sandwich Islands and South Georgia from the krill fishing industry. And we did the same in the Ross Sea. And you know, the penguins were obviously super excited about the win. But sometimes we do what we do because we just want to hang out with animals. And when I was in Antarctica doing a big story on leopard seals, I met this 1,000-pound female seal who decided that I was absolutely useless. I was going to starve to death. And for 4 days straight, she tried to force feed me penguins. Here she's first she started to give me live penguins, then she started to bring me dead penguins. And then at some point, she just sat there and stared at me with a dejected look on her face that I was an absolutely useless animal who was going to starve to death in her ocean.
So yeah, we don't want to lie to you. We do have the best jobs in the world. And we get to spend most of our time, I think, in the most majestic ecosystem on planet Earth. So where's the hope in all of this? A couple of years ago, I was reading a scientific paper written by some of our favorite scientists, and they actually were describing a way that we can restore the health and abundance to the ocean in a single generation. And what they were saying is that we need to focus our efforts on what they call recovery wedges. And those are 6. We don't have a choice. We have to do them all, and we have to do them at the same time. We need more marine protected areas. Those are the national parks of the ocean. We need to protect more species, like sea turtles and whales. We need to stop the flow of pollution into the ocean. And it's not just fertilizers and sediments. It's plastics. It's all the stuff that we throw in. We need to rethink how we extract our protein from the sea. Industrial fishing, the way that we've been doing it for the last 100 years, is no longer viable. We cannot go out into the ocean and industrially hunt wildlife. We also have to restore the habitats that have been destroyed, like coral reefs and mangroves. Finally, my favorite is we have to stop thinking about the ocean as a victim. It's not. It's a huge part of the solution to climate. And we added a seventh wedge, and that is we have to do all of this in a framework of equity and justice for coastal communities. And so why? Why do this work at all? Well, the ocean is the largest and the most important ecosystem on planet Earth. Over 71%. If a spaceship came from another galaxy, they would see our little bubble and they would say, oh, there's an ocean planet, and these are ocean creatures. We're very arrogant terrestrial animals, and so we don't recognize this. But when you go to the beach and you get tumbled by a wave and you have a big gulp of water, you're not just swallowing water, you're swallowing a rich broth of billions of microorganisms, little algae, little larvae. Those are the plankton that produce 50% of the oxygen that our planet needs. And when they grow up, they look sometimes like creatures like this. And even the bigger animals, we're just learning the role that wildlife plays in the carbon cycle. When we talk about carbon, we just think about chimneys and we think about cars. But animals, of course, everything is made out of carbon. When a big whale like this goes down deep into the ocean, maybe a mile, and it feeds on rich krill or plankton down there, well, when it comes back up to the surface, it poops. And that poop is fertilizer for more plankton. So it's like a gardening. And of course, things are not well. Like Paul said, the Arctic and the Antarctic are warming 4 times faster than anywhere else. In Antarctica, we used to see snow. Now we see rain. And we just came back from Australia. You want to tell people what we saw?
Yeah, we were just asked to come and film in the Great Barrier Reef. We heard there was a bleaching event. It was a 90% bleaching event.
90%.
It was the 4th mass bleaching event in recorded history. The first one was in 1980. We just hit our 4th, and it was by far the worst. They're expecting 50% of the Great Barrier Reef, the largest coral reef ecosystem in the world, to be dead in the next year.
So just to put this in context, coral bleaching had never even been recorded when we were in university, and now it's happening every year. When I say 90% of the largest coral reef ecosystem on planet Earth, you can see it from space. And the news barely blinks, So I want to say thank you, Katie, for allowing us to publish this in your newsletter, because the world needs to know. So our job is to make beautiful photographs to keep the ocean front and center in every conversation, to put it in the news at every chance we have. And when people ask us, what can I do today? Well, let me tell you, the biggest problem that the ocean has is apathy, really. Have you ever heard of the Sustainable Development Goals? Of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, number 14, the one that deals with the ocean, is the most underfunded. Americans, we, are the most philanthropic people on planet Earth. Collectively, we donate over $480 billion a year to charity. But where that money goes is really telling. So some of it goes to religion, some of it goes to health, education, arts. All of these are incredibly important things. But when you see how much goes to the environment, you start realizing that the foundation of life on Earth doesn't have the funding it needs. And only a tiny drop of that goes into the ocean. So I say to people, of course, keep donating to all of the things you care about. But if we want to live on this planet for the future, let's also look at our portfolio of charity. And in the next 10 years, let's just overbuy it for the environment. I don't care which organization, just give handsomely to organizations out there. Because in the 30 years that I've been doing this, and there's no reason for this photo to be up there except to get your attention, I've learned one thing, or we've learned one thing. Everybody thinks that somebody else is going to do something about it.
Cristina just became Canadian.
I'm very proud. But nature is our biggest ally. We were listening to presentations today, and everybody's talking about these incredible technologies, all the ROI, the investments, the cool toys that people are building. All of it is great. This planet doesn't have a better ally than nature to help us tackle the climate crisis. And we need to keep it alive. So now that I'm Canadian, I came up with an acronym. I call it SELFIE. And it stands for someone else is likely fixing it, eh? And it's just to remind us, nobody else is coming to save us. We're going to have to save ourselves. It's going to take all of us. So with that,
Please, Katie, let's chat.
We want to invite Katie to come up and help us peel the onion.
Nice work.
Thank you.
Oh my God, 25 minutes is not enough.
Aren't they amazing, honestly? I've had the privilege of meeting some pretty cool people in the course of my career, but I have to say, Paul and Cristina are two of the coolest by far. Thank you for that great presentation. Thank you for everything you all do. I'm going to ask some questions, but I mean, not everyone gets to be with you all, and I get to spend time with you pretty regularly. As you saw, Paul and Cristina invited my husband and me to the Baja Peninsula to see blue whales. It was one of the most extraordinary experiences that you can imagine. And I'm really happy we have a new newsletter at our media company called Ripple Effect, which focuses on environmental issues. It's twice a month, in addition to our 6-day-a-week newsletter. So go to katiecouric.com and sign up, and you can read pieces by Paul and Cristina and continue to be involved in their incredible work. So I have so many questions, but one of them is when we spent time together, I know you told me, Paul, despite the fact we saw some very tragic images that you and Cristina have shot, that part of your goal is to really convey the beauty of nature as a way to suck people in, to get them to care. Can you tell us how you both really developed that philosophy and why?
Yeah, thanks, Katie. That's a great question. And by the way, you are welcome back anytime.
Okay, well, you might be sorry you said that.
We'll be seeing you in Indonesia this fall. I am in love with nature. I am in love with animals. I have been all my life. And if we really, and then I've gone on this journey of being a scientist, collecting the data and just watching how it wasn't effective. And I thought, what is it going to take? And it took these really sort of intimate, emotional, powerful, evocative images where, I think it was the late Bob Capa who said, if your pictures aren't good enough, you're not close enough. And that really applies with wildlife and nature as well. And you have to obviously be very respectful of animals. You never want to harass an animal for a picture. But I spend, weeks, months, sometimes getting super close to the point like that grizzly bear with the water dripping off it. In the end, I was sitting there from me to you drinking a scotch while it's eating a fish because we'd been hanging out for a month. And so but I was able to photograph these intimate moments because I need people to feel what I feel.
And it is this visceral connection, right, Cristina? I mean, I could even hear in the room when there was that sad video of the polar bear, everyone is crestfallen and so upset, and then you see the penguin jumping for joy and everyone's like, so it really is this emotional connection, and you feel it very deeply when you're making these photographs.
Very deeply, Katie. And we take a page from one of the best storytellers in history, and that is Dr. Martin Luther King. When he started his famous speech, he didn't say, "I have a nightmare." He told us what the dream was. And that's what we want to do with our photographs. We want to lure you in with the beauty of nature, remind us why we're fighting for this. But then, of course, we have to remind you of the perils that we're facing today and, draft a path. And it's a roller coaster of emotions. And people need that to be drawn into the story.
I really like, sorry, can I just jump in?
Sorry?
Can I jump in?
He's Canadian. Yeah. He apologizes a lot.
Yes, please.
I like to equate it to boxing, and that's when we're communicating with, especially like on social media, that I call it jab, 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 punch. And the punch are the really dark, depressing, heavy issues that we need to talk to people about. But we need to earn their trust as an audience first. So we have to show you the beauty, the charismatic, the engaging, the interesting. And then once you've earned their trust and their respect and they're on a journey with you, and you need them to care about maybe signing a petition or getting involved in something, and then you can punch them with something really heavy and dark. But then they're like, okay, that hurt. But you have my trust, and then you take them on a journey again, and then you can hit them with another issue. So it really is, through trial and error of social media, that you just can't hit people dark, dark, dark because they all run away.
And both Paul and Cristina have incredible Instagram accounts. If you don't follow them, you definitely should. It's such a joy to see your work on a daily basis. You do so many different things. You attack so many different problems. I mean, it's a huge list of things. You travel all over the world addressing all kinds of things. And when you kind of stack them up, I'm just curious, do you see one issue more urgent than the other? Because there are so many, sadly.
So we do follow that framework of the 6 wedges, and we try to tell stories on all of the wedges, and that's kind of how we measure, how are we doing. But we are a service organization. We're storytellers, we're communicators, we're reporters, so we don't create the change. We service about 150 other organizations. We tell their stories. We shine the spotlight on their frontlines heroism because they're heroes. And without us, they would be invisible, Katie. So.
You talk about the direct impact the ocean has on our health in general, and I wondered if you could elaborate a little bit on that. I mean, you talked briefly about it, Cristina, about the plankton, and Cristina is obsessed with whale poop, by the way. Don't get her started on that.
In a good way.
But talk about sort of this connection that human life has to marine life.
Yeah, I think as marine biologists, we study this in school. The first life that emerged on this planet came out of the ocean. And everything on this planet, will live or die if the ocean lives or dies. Because it generates it's a huge conveyor belt of currents, of precipitation. It moderates our weather, but it produces 50% of the oxygen we breathe, these phytoplankton. It's a miniature, microscopic, invisible rainforest in the ocean, and we've lost the equivalent of 4 Amazonian rainforests of these plankton. As the ocean gets warmer and becomes more acidic, we don't even see it. And as we lose the coral reefs, it's like having the biggest wildfire on the planet, but it's underwater.
Yeah, so, talk about the impact of what's happening to the coral reefs, if you could, and sort of how much danger we're in. Obviously, you said that, 90%
of the Great Barrier
Reef.
But over 50 countries reported severe bleaching this year.
So why is that such an important issue?
Just because it really is the canary in the coal mine, that as the oceans get warmer, animals that have been there for millions of years are not able to adjust quickly enough. So you think of 600 coral species, all of a sudden when we were at the Great Barrier Reef, normally it's around 24, 25, 26 degrees Celsius. What is that in Fahrenheit, like 70? But now the Barrier Reef was 35 degrees Celsius when we were there, which is, 100? And then all these animals can't adjust. The coral, which are living organisms, all just panic and they turn white, and sort of all the life that is on this on the coral reef dies, and then the coral reef, 50% of it's just going to turn to rubble. And this is home for 700 species of fish, for thousands of invertebrates.
25% of all biodiversity in the ocean is found in coral reefs. It's huge, and there's 2 species on this planet that are not very good at adjusting to temperature changes, and those are coral reefs and humans. So as the reefs go,
So is it fixable? Is it reversible? What can be done to change the situation?
I think the only solution we have is to tackle emissions as soon as possible. Tackle emissions.
Carbon emissions.
Yeah, Dr. Rav Shami, who is an economist with the World Economic Forum, was explaining to me that the problem that we have is a carbon problem. We have too much carbon in the atmosphere. Normally, it's buried underground as fossil fuels that are buried. And he was saying, we need to do 2 things. We need to close the tap and turn emissions off as soon as we can, or we're going to lose these ecosystems irreversibly. And the second thing we need to do is we need to drain the tub. And the best tool we have is ecosystems like oceans, mangroves, rainforests to draw down the carbon from the atmosphere again. We need nature. We need it to be alive, and we need to invest accordingly.
What else do you think we need, Paul? I mean, obviously, there's so many other things that need to be addressed.
We just need to factor in the environment, the planet. I mean, we think about money, love, sex, work, relationships, every 2 minutes all day long. And so often we don't factor in, like I have friends saying, we can't decide if we should build our 5th home. It's a big decision in the family. I'm like, well, if you factor in the planet, maybe you're not going to do it. Or we can't decide if we should stay home this year or fly everybody to the Maldives. I mean, well, if you factor in the planet, you're probably going to stay home. Like, if we can't decide if we're going to have our 7th kid, well, maybe you're not going to do that. So I think every time you obviously vote, pull out your visa, eat, shop, you have to start thinking about, is this good for the planet or not?
Has your story storytelling made an impact? I mean, is there a way to measure your stories, getting people to care, and getting people involved? It doesn't seem like from that chart, Cristina, that you showed in terms of support for the environment, where it sits, on the pyramid or whatever you call it. But do you feel like that you're changing hearts and minds? Because if you don't feel that way, how do you keep doing what you're doing?
No, I do feel we're making a lot of progress. I mean, 20 years ago, when we were working for National Geographic, we were not even allowed to talk about climate change because it might offend a portion of the people that were listening to us. I think everybody's talking about it today, and that is huge already. I think understanding that this is not an option, this is not a choice. When we think about where we're making our donations, it's not that climate change is a new bucket that we have to donate to. Climate change is a hole in every other bucket of the things that we care. Nothing will be possible if we don't address climate change. And it can be a heavy lift, but if we do it together as a community, if we lean into optimism and hope and positivity, I think there's a lot of good things happening. So for us, our storytelling is a lot about the solutions, about the heroes that need our attention, and reminding us, there's still a lot of good stuff out there to fight for. I mean, those blue whales, they need us.
There are a lot of good people doing a lot of good work out there right now, really, and a lot of brilliant people, that are really trying to think about solutions. We just need to move faster. But have you seen the movie Don't Look Up with Leonardo DiCaprio?
Yes.
Yeah, so that movie punched me in the face so hard because I feel whenever I go on television and I talk about climate change or whatever, people are like, oh my gosh, that's just this, It's so like it's that asteroid coming towards Earth, and the host says, I hope it hits my ex-wife's house first, or the next guy's like, I hope I can get all the trillions of dollars worth of minerals off there before it does hit Earth. But like this climate change is this asteroid hurling towards us, and it's here now. And if we don't, and you saw the chart, the graph of carbon in the atmosphere going off, that if we don't address that, we really are in trouble.
There are also some simpler issues, like when we were together, you talked about whale strikes, right? Mm-hmm. That if cruise ships just lowered their speed by really not that much, so many whales would be saved and protected. Can you talk about that and how difficult it's been to change policy? Because that seems like such a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, so whales, they've evolved over many millions of years, and they never had ships in their life, so they don't know that when a ship is coming, they should get out of the way. And what ends up happening is, as we have more than ever tankers and all the Amazon ships shipping all our stuff across the planet, whales are getting hit.
They're a sponsor, by the way.
And that's okay, because when we don't do it, our partners do. You met Michael Fishback of the Whale Guardians. He figured out, if I just go and talk to the shipping companies and the ports, maybe they'll listen. And guess what? They do listen. They say, we don't want to kill whales. We have no idea.
So it has changed.
Yes, it has changed.
Sure.
And poor Michael, there he is with Delphi, his daughter, and it's just the two of them, and they have no way of communicating and scaling. So we come in, we bring Katie Couric, we bring CNN, we bring the media, the spotlight to them, and they're doing great. They've been able to scale, and now they're working in Brazil and Sri Lanka.
That's such good news, because I think when we were together, nothing was really being done about that.
Yeah, no, it's happening fast,
So now they're
Katie,
listening, which is great. You talked about all the tech and everything that's being discussed at this conference, and I've always wanted to ask you guys about deep ocean mining and how we're digging deep into the oceans for all these I guess
rare earth minerals. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Cristina. Rare earth minerals, that's what I wanted to say. So how serious an issue is that, and can you just kind of share your perspective on that with the audience?
It's one of the worst ideas we've ever had. I think that we are in the middle of an energy transition, and it's very exciting. I love the innovation, so many brilliant minds thinking about how to get us off fossil fuels. All transitions are messy. Not all the solutions are going to be perfect. We know that the windmills are having some bad effects. We know that the EVs have to have earth rare minerals. But I just think that this deep sea mining is dumb. They paint it to you like they're going to go down in the bottom of the ocean and gingerly extract these nodules. Well, that's not how mining happens. We know nothing about the bottom of the ocean. We don't know what kind of biodiversity lives there. We do know that it stores a lot of the carbon that's sequestered in the bottom of the ocean, and they're going to go and remove all that, create a massive plume of toxic radioactive sediments. I mean, it's just a very bad idea.
You're going to have two massive plumes, the one where when they dig up all the minerals, and the one when they bring all the minerals to the surface, and they're going to create a second big plume that goes into the ocean. And then just, again, these places have taken billions of years to evolve to get to this point, and now we're going to disrupt that as well. Meanwhile, we're dragging bottom trawlers. This evening, it's about hope, right?
It's hope.
Yeah. No, but I just wanted to ask you about it. And
bad idea, Katie. Bad idea. And it's one Canadian company.
Is it being done in a widespread way right now, or not?
Smarmy Canadian businessman, and he's trying to sell it as a good thing. My hope is that there's even smarter people with great innovations already leaning into hydrogen technology. And there's so many other ways of doing it. So I hope we're not going to go that route.
So, all right, turning to hope.
Yes,
Tell us about some of the other wins that you all have had. You talked about marine protected areas that you've been able to establish. Give us some good news about the environment.
Yes, advocacy works. We were listening to Jane Fonda, and her videos, and she's been such an advocate for so many years.
I'm interviewing her tomorrow, so.
I know, and Robert Redford just wrote the foreword to my new book. I mean, these are the real environmentalists. So exciting. Advocacy works, but only if we all participate. So last year, we went to the CITES conference. CITES is the Convention on the International Trade of Endangered Species. Think about how that sounds. These are people that are trading polar bear pelts and elephant tusks, and the trade of sharks. And there's two groups of people there, the ones that are advocating for protection and the ones that are advocating for trade. Well, we were able to lobby and did a campaign to protect 54 species of sharks that are no longer being able to trade internationally. So, these are small wins, and they take a lot of time, but, we have to create the campaigns, advocate, lean on you, our followers, to help us, sign petitions, talk to your friends.
We were just in New Zealand, and we were invited there to go film, and we were shocked when we got there that, you fly into New Zealand, and it's the most protected place in the world. You get the biosecurity checks are intense, and everything on land is protected. Well, you find out that it's a 93% ocean country, and guess what their marine protected areas are? Everyone's striving to get to 30 by 2030. Theirs is 0.38%, and that's mostly
less than 0.5%.
And that's mostly to protect underground sea cables and transmission cables. So it was shocking to see that. And then you go to these tiny little protected areas and to see how rich and beautiful it is. But then we met this group called the Young Ocean Explorers, and they're father and daughter. Steve Hathaway and Riley Hathaway, and they reach over 700,000 kids a year talking about ocean conservation, and they're making a difference. So we just arrived with Sea Legacy, the nonprofit, and we brought our boat there, and we filmed them, we did stories about them, and now every TV station is asking to talk about it, and now there's a lot of energy building. So the thing about conservation work is it's never fast and easy, and it's never quick. It's always a marathon. It's just when you're underfunded and understaffed, and there's not that many people doing it, you always feel a bit overwhelmed.
Right.
But nothing tastes better than having a conservation win. That's
one last example, just because we were there.
Please.
So when we were in Baja, you met Mario Gomez.
Yeah.
And Mario has been working for years to create a biosphere reserve from Loreto Bay on the inside of Baja California down to Cabo, all the way out to Magdalena Bay. It looks like a sock. And they used to call it El Calcetín. So I said, no, let's call it Dos Mares, 2 seas. And, we've been working for a long time to get the political support, the fishermen, and it's not going to happen with this president. But Mexico, we just elected our first female president, Claudia Sheinbaum.
That's awesome.
And one of her first acts, even before she becomes president, is she's working with Mario and with people like me to create an ocean and coast strategy for Mexico. One of the first things she's going to do is declare Dos Mares.
That's amazing.
So
Gotta
exciting.
have women to get things done, right, Christina?
Oh my God, Katie for president.
I agree with that. I agree.
Because it's so thrilling to have Paul and Cristina here. Does anyone want to ask them a question? I think, do we have mics in the back? And I'm happy to give up my mic.
And maybe some lights in the house. Can we do that? Keelan, thank you. You know how to do it all.
Okay, perfect. Oh, great.
Wow, there's people here.
Anyway, yeah, please. Who has a question? This gentleman right here in the dark hair and the Oxford cloth shirt.
Nice shirt.
Thank you.
She's into fashion.
Thank you, Paul and Cristina. My name is Camilo. I'm from Sanibel Island, Florida, and I work in conservation in the Turks and Caicos Islands. And one thing I've become aware of, you talked about what's going on at the Great Barrier Reef, And this past a year ago, we experienced a 98% die-off of natural colonies of corals in TCI. And despite this, I'm also from Southwest Florida, and the Miccosukee tribe lives in the Big Cypress National Preserve. And there's, among indigenous people, there's a lot of skepticism towards the conservation movement as an agenda of, a post-colonial dialogue and a Western idea. And long story short, I'm wondering, how do we overcome that when I'm working with TCI Islanders and I'm trying to tell them that responsible development is the way to go. And they're skeptical because they think it's just a Western agenda. How do you overcome that?
That's a great, great question. Cristina?
Well, it's not surprising, right? I mean, conservation has been really colonial. It was not so long ago that the government of Botswana actually had the Nama people removed from Kruger National Park, moved them out. So we have to include indigenous people in the decision making, and it's never okay for us to just go and say, we think this is a better way. Canada is a great example of how this is working in a really important way, just giving the power to indigenous people to make their own decisions. What is it, Klemtu, the Kirasu-Heiheis people, they just declared their first indigenous-led marine protected area. They recognize this is our breadbasket. If we don't protect it, it's going to be gone.
The Canadian government refused to protect it.
And so they said, we're not going to wait for the Canadian government anymore. We're going to do it. And then Canada had to hurry up and catch up. And we're seeing more and more of this indigenous-led. So if you can encourage them, to attend conferences, the World Wilderness Conference is coming up, hundreds of indigenous leaders are going to come to talk about their initiatives, and it's a great way for that inter-indigenous dialogue that is more appropriate.
It's a long, slow dance, but often it obviously comes back to, again, really sound science, but really powerful, beautiful visuals, and it needs to be presented to them gently. It's going to take a long time. We don't have a lot of time, and then it needs to become their idea, and then they need to run with it.
Yeah, and back to Mexico, the campaign that we ran for Mario, we ran it in Spanish, and we ran it with the local fishermen because they were very skeptical. They're like, you're here to tell us we can't fish. And so it took many years of sitting down, dialogue, talking. I mean, it's long trudge. Good luck.
There's a gentleman over here. Sorry to make you run around so much.
What kind of shirt is that?
I can't really see it. Looks like a denim style shirt.
Yeah, that's nice.
With snaps, I
Canadian
believe.
tuxedo.
Hi, thank you so much for coming and sharing your visual imagery and sharing your experiences. I partner with nonprofit organizations, including an organization called Environment America, that is pushing back against the rush to deep sea mining.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
The good news is that shouldn't we do this, but we don't need to do this. We have other solutions. My question for you is that the current proposals to mine in the Central Pacific Ocean, there's going to be an International Seabed Authority meeting coming up next month. There's talk about how on Capitol Hill we can exploit these resources. One of the most inaccessible places on Earth, and as you mentioned, it's very difficult. We don't know everything that is down there. What we do know is that it's a rich and amazing place. Your imagery connects so much with people because we can see it. How do we convey to people the importance of an area of the ocean that is more mysterious to us than any other place on Earth?
I think it's storytelling, right? I mean, we are very fascinated by the space, and I mean, I don't know if you've gotten your ticket from Elon, but I don't think most of us will ever go. And yet we have this incredible curiosity, fascination with a place we will never get to see. So storytelling is the way that we do it.
Are there some places, though, that are so inaccessible that are really important to tell the story of, that you just can't, you simply can't do it?
Well, James Cameron seems to get there. He got down to something like 26,000 feet. I mean, but again, you'd first have to show people, otherwise people just go into their mind. I think we don't want to hurt, we don't want to be sad, we don't want to be angry. So in our minds, we're like, well, it must just be all mud anyway, so it's fine. And then you can emotionally let that go. But to keep people honest and keep the story honest, you have to use the power of visual storytelling to show the absolute beauty, rawness, wildness of this place, what's at stake. We're working now in southern Australia where there's going to be a lot of seismic exploration for oil drilling. And so we were filming stories about the southern right whales and to show how they're going to be displaced if that happens.
Nobody's allowed to dive with these animals. It was a very special permit that they gave us to get in the water with these whales.
It just really comes down to a lot of funding. You got to go down there. You got to get the visuals. You have to show people what's going to get destroyed if it goes ahead. And then you got to work with groups like us that have access to 60 million people every day, and you got to pump that out to the world as much as you can, and we're here to help.
In terms of the deep sea mining, just last one thought. I've heard that a lot of countries are now banning and putting in a moratorium, but the law of the sea is on our side. And if a few countries just sue the deep sea, what is it called, the Deep Bed Authority, those guys who are, of course, very corrupt already, maybe we have a chance. Anyway.
Yes. The gentleman in the plaid shirt.
Wearing an SDG pin. That's the Sustainable Development Goals that Cristina referred to.
Nice.
SDG 14 is called Life Underwater. Mm-hmm. My favorite SDG is SDG 13, Climate Action. Mm-hmm. So I generally wear this because people ask, what is that? A rainbow?
Yeah.
Sort of.
Are you gay? Yeah.
Yeah. It's a conversation starter. In any case, there's something else you said. That wasn't the point of my raising hand. There's something else Cristina said about advocacy, and it can't just be a handful of us being involved. My name is Greg Hamra, longtime participant here at the Aspen Ideas Festival, and I represent Citizens Climate Lobby. I'm the group leader of the Miami chapter. We like to call it the Ground Zero chapter. And what we like to say at CCL is, whether it's at CCL or outside of CCL, we need political will for a livable world. But politicians don't create political will. They respond to it, which is what she said. But it can't just be her and him and me and 12 more of us. It's got to be everybody. Mm-hmm. It's a civic duty. And so 2 weeks ago today, Tuesday, right? 2 weeks ago today, we had our big annual summer lobby day on Capitol Hill with nearly 1,000 volunteers from all over the country in 450 meetings with members of Congress. Great. To talk about bold climate policy. Not to talk about, to ask lawmakers to get behind a couple of specific policies. Mm-hmm. And so I'm simply raising my hand, not with a question, but with an offer. Do anybody is interested in, exercising your civic duty and your democratic right to talk to your lawmakers? I can give you that opportunity. It's very empowering if you've never done it. I'm sure a lot of people in this room have done it at Aspen. But, you get education. We're known on the Hill.
Let's do it.
So
we
talk
need
to me at Citizens Climate Lobby. I'm here.
It works. Great. It works.
Yeah, thank you.
The Minister of the Environment of Panama called us and said, I want to create this marine protected area, but I need the public support in order for the president to sign legislation. We did a little campaign. It wasn't that difficult. Panama now today has 54% of its water is protected. More water than land is protected. I mean, it's one guy, Do it. Exactly.
And they do pay attention when they get calls from constituents. Yeah. People don't think it matters, but they really do pay attention. There's one more question. I think we have time for one more. Okay. Someone's pointing dramatically at somebody. Who?
And Katie, we didn't even talk about plastics.
Is that Bill? Oh, it's Bill Nelson. And he's wearing a blue shirt as well. Hello.
So at NASA, we decided if you want to do something about mitigating what's going on, which the Earth is heating up, we've got to understand what the measures of it are. We have a couple of dozen spacecraft on orbit that are giving us very specific information. And so we decided to make that available real time. So you can either go to earth.gov and you can get this information real time, what the temperature is, what the fire hazards are, etc. The temperature of the oceans, the elevation of the oceans. Now we have a satellite up there that for the first time ever, you can measure the elevation of fresh water. the lakes, the rivers, the streams, the reservoirs. Earth.gov, or go to nasa.gov and go to the Earth Information Center. It's a physical location at NASA headquarters and the Museum of Natural History, but it is a virtual headquarters as well, the Earth Information Center.
We're all coming.
Thanks, yeah. Maybe you could write about that in our Ripple Effect newsletter.
Be awesome.
What do you think? I'll call you.
And speaking about ripple effect, we just wrote about microplastics, Katie. You asked me to write about that, and I had a meeting with somebody that alerted me to, okay, talk about microplastics.
Oh, wait, what? Okay, okay, one more question. Stand up. Who is it?
It better be about plastics.
Okay.
Oh, it's a little one.
Stand up. Stand up. Hi.
Hi.
What do you think is the most hard and difficult animal to take a picture of?
Paul.
Wait, what was the question?
I didn't quite hear the question.
What is the most hard and difficult and complicated animal to take a picture of?
Oh, okay. What's the hardest picture, hardest thing you've ever photographed? Yeah?
You want to photograph plankton.
I showed the picture of the aerial of narwhals in my talk. That was 5 years of failing. So when I take pictures of animals and wildlife, we fail about 98% of the time. We only take about 5 good pictures a year, and we're out there all year shooting hundreds of thousands of pictures. And so that picture, though, I failed 99.8% of the time. I only had 1.5 good days of shooting. In 5 years of trying, I had to buy an airplane, learn how to fly it. I crashed it. I got another airplane. It's not funny, people. This is a serious story. And then the day that we finally were able to land and get all these pictures of narwhals, the ice was so rotten and thin, I fell through and I dislocated my shoulder. And it took my assistant an hour and a half to reset it because everything was so cold. But that ended up going into National Geographic. So I love it when people write me on Instagram, like, love your clicks, nice snap. I just want to travel the world and take pictures like you. I'm like, yeah, you have no idea. But it's part of the journey, and we love it. But and Cristina, for every picture we have, we could do a long talk about the challenges of making those images.
What was the most challenging photo you've
Oh my God,
taken?
the good ones are rare. I think the story that we did with the southern right whales was really difficult because, first of all, it's in a place where there's a lot of great white sharks, so you have to be watching your back all the time. And these whales, they're not normal whales. They're not like humpbacks that are friendly. These ones are very wild, pelagic. They're out in Antarctica, and they're too curious. They're too big and too curious, and they want to come and they want to touch you and push you around.
I mean,
and it's
aren't
terrifying.
you scared a lot of the time that you're going to get eaten?
Not eaten by the whale, but just they're baleen whales, but they have those big callosities, those big barnacle communities on their heads, and we learned very quickly that they use those for ramming. And so they play with dolphins and stuff, but they see us inept creatures in the water. And I had this juvenile, which is still 80,000 pounds and 40 feet long, I was free diving. I went down to 30 feet towards the bottom, and it just came up to me and just hit me so hard, and it's tried to shove me into the sand, and I'm trying to go up and get a breath of air.
I have this on the drone, and I'm like, oh.
We can't show the footage because it looks like harassment, although I tried to press charges against the whale for harassment, but because we were just sitting there, and he just came out of nowhere and for fun, and I think
More than once, they came in and touched us and pushed us around.
And Cristina had a mother come by and try and sort of hit her in the head with her tail, which is 22 feet wide.
It's the first time in our lives, that we both went, it's time to get out of the water. Out.
Yeah, I mean, what you do is incredibly dangerous.
It can be, yeah.
And before we go, I mean, you both are so incredible and also charming and fun to be with and do such compelling work. I think a lot of people here would like to support what you do. So how can people support Sea Legacy? I ain't too proud to beg. I'm happy to kind of share
Thank you, Katie.
the information. No,
well,
really.
you've been a long-time wonderful supporter of ours as well. And
and we have a website we think is beautiful. We invite you to come and visit sealegacy.org, and there's a portal to donate. And we have an amazing community of monthly donors that give as little as $5. Some of them give thousands of dollars, but they're the ones that keep us out there because their money comes with no chains, no shackles for us. They don't come and say, give us the KPIs. They just want us to be out there doing the work that we think is important.
And I think what Cristina said earlier was so important, that there are 5,000 ocean conservation groups in the United States alone. usually 1 or 2 people, all underfunded, can't do the work, can't pay themselves a salary, they can't get moving. And like that DeathNet video that we showed where, this conservation groups for 30 years tried to get these mile-long nets banned off the coast of Los Angeles that have a 9 off California that have a 9-to-1 bycatch ratio, killing sharks, turtles, dolphins, whales, and they called us in, and very quickly we were able to get it passed at the state level and then at the federal level to get those nets banned.
The former Senator Feinstein, I mean, she was a hero. She was amazing.
But we love it that whatever comes to us, we use to elevate the work of everyone else, and when the tide rises, all boats float.
Well,
Yeah, so support us. We would love your support.
Cristina and Paul, thank you both so much.
Thank you, Kate.